This is Surly Grognards for Monday, September 10th, 2012. My name is Peter Bowman, and I'm joined, as usual, by my good friend and co-host, Eric Carlson. Eric, say hi to the people.
Hey, people.
Excellent.
And you
So,
not people. I know some of your chat boxes.
we have to applying a Turing test or something like that at some point. Ooh. What's the name of the test from Blade Runner?
Oh, the Voight Conf.
We have to play the Void Conf to the chat at some point.
Yes.
At
Just,
any rate,
just so you guys know, the answer is that you are also a tortoise.
Eric is lying. At any rate, this week's episode is inspired by an email we got from a listener, and I thought that it was a good enough question that I thought it would be merit an entire show. The question came in from, let me get the guy's name here. Hold on a second. Curses, I misclicked. Here. Brax Chusin, who asks, hi guys, I'm very interested in GMing, but as a freshman in college, my funds are quite limited. Are there any free or cheaper books out there for a new GM? Thanks. Well, Brax, this week's episode is RPGs on a budget, so hope you enjoy and hope we can help. So, there actually are a surprising number of ways you can actually get going with an RPG on the cheap. There are actually RPGs out there you can get for free completely, and we'll talk about some of those a little bit later on. And of course, there are ways you can find cheaper versions of the books. You either buy them used or what have you. We'll touch on that. We'll go into more detail about that later. And there are systems that tend to be cheaper than others also. There are other ways we'll talk about how to save money while you're playing and such as we go along. So Eric,
Yo.
what would you say? What would you suggest? Is sort of off the top of your head for a way to sort of make sure if you're planning, and this is more specifically for a game master, someone's planning on running a game, but a good sort of starting point for someone who wants to get into running a game on the cheap.
eBay.
eBay's.
Yep. It immediately leaps to mind as a way to get stuff on the cheap. It's a font of cheap older stuff.
Yep.
And very, very expensive, rare older stuff.
Yeah. That's actually was sort of my first thought and first tip also. Not specifically eBay, but eBay's a good place to find these.
Right.
Is finding copies of earlier editions of a game. Some games, when they do edition updates, don't make significant changes.
This is true.
A prime example is that leaps to mind is you can probably score a copy of the basic set for GURPS 3rd edition off eBay for like $5, maybe 10.
And GURPS has changed very little over the years.
So the basic rulebook, even if you get involved in a game later that they're playing 4th edition, there are some changes and they're significant in certain ways. But moving from 3rd to 4th will be relatively easy and painless.
The old White Wolf games are the same, also, or similar in that way also.
Yep.
Very little actually changed.
So that's a good starting point. And honestly, GURPS is another good starting point in some ways. It's not the easiest system to learn, as we mentioned, but it has the advantage that the base rulebook, you really technically don't need anything else, even as a game master. Because you can almost everything you need is as a game master is in that book, in terms of basic stuff. It's got, it doesn't have any pre-gen monsters or bad guys or anything like that, but those are easy to make up on your own.
And I'm certain you can dig up some online resources for that also.
Absolutely. The internet is your friend. It's also your enemy, but that's sort of a well-known fact. You can find anything on the internet. Some of it is even true. Is a quote of my friend Peter Shaw. He's very fond of.
I like that. Some of it is even true.
Yeah. But the thing is that like the GURPS basic rulebook, the 3rd edition one, it has the basic rules for creating characters. It has basic rules for magic. It has basic rules for psionics. It has a basic equipment list for sort of low fantasy fantasy periods. Like either for historical periods or for like a fantasy game or what have you. It's got an equipment list. It's got equipment for modern era guns and stuff like that. And it's got some sci-fi weapons and armor too. And for the most part, you really can basically run anything that fits in those three categories. That blend either fits into or blends those three time periods, which covers basically everything, with just the basic book. But if you want to spend a little bit more money, you can probably just you can again go back to eBay and find a copy of the third edition version of any of the GURPS insert genre here books,
It's true.
like GURPS Space, GURPS Fantasy, GURPS Old West, or what have you. Again, you'll probably find it for reasonably cheap, reasonably priced, and that'll give you the extra stuff you need. And again, the thing about GURPS is that it's very modular, so if you want to expand stuff later when you have more money, you can do it.
There are
But
also gobs and gobs of second and third edition Dungeons and Dragons books online
yeah,
for the cheap.
yeah. Again, it's a good. Almost any of the previous edition stuff you can of a currently existing game, you can find copies of the not collectible stuff for very cheap, either on eBay or sites like that. You could try going down to your local game store and
If
see
your
if they've
local
got,
game store is awesome, they will have a bunch of used stuff also. If it is not awesome, it'll just occasionally have sales.
right. And sales are basically to go to they'll sometimes they'll put stuff that's gone out of date on clearance because they don't need it. The new edition came out. Stuff like that's a good place to start. Another thing, another option, as I mentioned, are looking for some free RPGs because there are some that do exist. Uh, this falls in the
These
category
I've
of
actually never encountered.
ah, but you see, Eric, the internet again is your friend.
Is my friend and my enemy.
Yes, it's your frenemy. No, it's not.
I don't know if I'd go as far as a frenemy because that implies some form of mutual respect. Because let's face
And
facts, no
yeah,
one actually respects the internet, and the internet doesn't respect anyone.
yeah, you're right. It's both a frenemy. Yeah, you're right. At any rate, so an example of the first example that sort of I thought of this, it falls in the category of an earlier edition also. If you go to Steve Jackson Games website, which is e23. This is their web store specifically, e23.sjgames.com. You could find a copy of the Ars Magica 4th edition core rulebook there for free in PDF form. Uh, I just looked it up. Basically, you can do a Google search for Ars Magica 4th edition PDF, and it'll bring you right there. And I've talked about Ars Magica before. It may not be
Mhm.
exactly the right game for you, but if that sounds like it might tickle your fancy, you can get it for free. There are a couple other games I know of off the top of my head that are. There's one other one off the top of my head that I know of is free. And there are a couple other ones I found doing a little bit of research that I don't know much about. There is a game called Rysis, the Anything RPG, which is a quick and dirty little sort of uh, basically a universal system.
Hmm.
A little bit sort of, it's a little sort of slapsticky. It's not too serious a game, but it's very simple. It's very straightforward. The rules are free. Uh, just again, let me dig up the actual URL for this. Hold on.
Should probably post this stuff in the chat.
I will in a bit, but anyways, the Rysis, the Anything RPG, you get that at www.222.pair.com/sjohn/rysis.htm. I'll post links in the chat. Um, but again, you can just do a Google search for Rysis, Risus, the Anything RPG. It's a PDF. There's a PDF of the rules. It's like 5 pages long, and there are a host of various resources on the website. Um, God, they've got an entire campaign module. There's a downloads link with the RPG, some expansions of various sort of things, genre stuff. It's actually a remarkably fun little site. And as I said, you download a PDF and it's like 5 or 6 pages. So printing out copies for your friends will cost you just whatever it costs you to you know costs you to pay for it. I mean, print it. It's not that much. I mean, if you're in college, you could just go down
Yeah,
to
if
the
you're in college, just
library
go down to the computer lab.
and make use of the printer there. I've just posted the links to the first two I talked about in the chat there. Um, I also did a quick search on free RPG books. Uh, there is a game called Witchcraft that I know nothing about, but apparently it's free.
Hmm.
Um, don't know much about it. And there's another one called the Neverwhere RPG, which is
Hmm.
again free. That's made
Like the William Gibson novel. Wait a minute. Was that William Gibson? No, there's a book I've read called Neverwhere. I want to say Gibson wrote it.
It's
This
possible.
is also completely off topic.
Yeah, well, it's okay. But at any rate, it's made by let's see what's the name of the company here. Postmortem Studios, and it can be downloaded for free off their site. The Witchcraft is Eden Studios. Um, and again, I don't know anything about the systems, how good they are, or anything like that. But a quick Google search on for free RPG books. That's not what I wanted at all.
Damn you, internet!
Yeah, the internet's being, but quick Google search and for on free RPG books, and you'll be surprised at what you find.
As far as my advice goes, I've been, suppose one way you look at it, you could say lucky enough to have lived through three game store closings. And despite being poor for the vast majority of my life, I have accumulated quite the library simply by being a vulture and picking stuff up on the last day that they're open. Where they're practically giving it away just to clear out the inventory.
So yeah, keeping an eye for that sort of thing. Sales are always great. But
Um,
honestly, if you're looking,
it's actually not uncommon for certain awesome companies to release playtest versions of their rules online for free.
yep,
I know Privateer Press does this fairly frequently, but that's almost exclusively with their wargaming.
yep,
So that's not cheap anyway.
nope, and that will bring me to another point in a bit. But um, an important thing another suggestion I have, if you're planning on yeah, Rio Planeswalker brings up a point right now. If you're interested, you can actually join the open playtest for the new edition of Dungeons and Dragons,
hmm
and you can get the current rulebook for that for free if you sign up for the playtest. Technically, if you want to run that with your group, everyone has to sign up for the playtest because it's a playtest. So you got to sign. You basically effectively have to
Playtest.
playtest it. So, but it's free, so it's another thing you can do.
It's
Uh,
actually a great idea because because you might potentially end up helping them make a version of Dungeons and Dragons that won't cause an edition war. I mean, one's coming, but we can at least mitigate the bloodshed.
but the other big thing, important note, is that to do with this is that you can help shape the game to be something in theory, how much it actually happens, but you help shape the game to be something you'll enjoy. Um, there are also a couple other resources. Pathfinder has most of the core rules for the game available for free on the web. Um,
Really? So I pirated that PDF version of their rulebook for nothing?
there's more of the text in there, and you should never ever pirate RPG books, Eric. That's a bad thing.
I know. It was more someone gave me a flash drive that happened to have it on there.
But yeah, just go to d20 www.d20pfsrd.com. This is the Pathfinder SRD system resource document, and it has most of the basic rules, monsters, bestiary, all this stuff in there. You won't have the handy book with you at the table.
But that's what computers are for.
Yep.
There'll
But
be someone there with a netbook. There always is.
but again, it's a great resource and it will help you save money. Um, And honestly, another tip, my personal biggest piece of advice would be to, again, if you before I forget, if you miss the URL, it's d20pfsrd.com, or you could just do a Google search for Pathfinder SRD. Um, but again, we're sort of looking at ways to keep things on the cheap here. Once you have a system, um, I personally would, in many ways, recommend going with one of the universal systems if you're planning to wanting to do things on the cheap, for the simple reason that
They almost
in
never require miniatures.
that's actually not the big thing, but I'll touch on that a bit in a minute. But the big thing is that you can get a lot of mileage out of just the basic book with those games, and a lot of other sort of more uh, setting specific stuff. The game master often needs one or two other books on top of what the
Right.
players need. That's definitively the case with, say, Dungeons and Dragons, where the game master really needs three books. You
Yeah,
know,
he needs
the player's handbook,
player's book,
the DM's book, and the
DMG.
monster book.
Yeah.
Um, so there's that. Now, systems that don't require maps are another big advantage. Ways to sort of save money because you're less tempted to spend money on having a map on the table and miniatures and such. There are ways to make that cheaper even if you're doing that. And if you're going to play,
Yeah.
say, a hero system, I've got a tip for how to handle that, and I'll get to that. Um, you could also just play online using something like MapTool, which is free. But there's a lot to be said for actually playing with your friends in real space because it's more social in my opinion. Um,
And you can keep track of how many drinks they've had.
Indeed. But so, for instance, if you were, say, running a hero system game, or D&D 4th edition, uh, you could print up a map, print up, a big, print up on your printer several sheets of grid paper, either hexagons or square grid, and you tape it together, and you can sort of, draw the map on there, and for your miniatures, all you really need is a printer to print out little pictures that you cut out and you glue to cardboard. Uh, in the first D&D third edition game I played in, which is the first time I actually played third edition, what our DM did to make our little our quote miniatures, we dubbed them Pogs, and you'll see why in a second. Um, uh, Clark one in the chat's touching on exactly what he did. What we ended up doing is basically we had ordered Chinese food from the local Chinese restaurant, and so separating the containers of food were these things of cardboard that are maybe quarter of an inch thick maybe,
Hmm.
and we basically just glued the little piece of paper on top with the information on them, and cut the cardboard out, and we had little pogs that we could use for tokens of the map, and we ended up just that's what we used the entire campaign. Um, it worked really well. It doesn't have the visual appeal of miniatures, but
Because miniatures are awesome.
you can get a lot of mileage out if you start printing up pictures of like, actual pictures, like off of images you find on like Google Images or what have you.
Or if you're at all artistically inclined, just doodle on it every week.
Exactly. Um, and honestly, I would personally recommend instead of printing, if you're planning on doing a lot of map-based combat, shelling out this sort of like roundabout, like actually, if you're playing on a square grid for like Dungeons and Dragons, there's a product which I cannot recommend highly enough. Uh, Paizo makes this map. It's a reusable map, square grid map that is like $13, and you can use either dry erase or wet erase markers on it. Draw on it, and then you either dry erase or wet erase, and just wipe. If it's use wet erase markers, get a damp paper towel and wipe it down, and then dry it off with a wet dry towel, and you can draw on it again. Or if you use dry erase markers, just wipe it down after you're done with it. It's really, really useful. It's incredibly reusable. I bought a second one only because my first one got damaged when my apartment flooded a couple of years ago. Uh, so, but I bought a second one. It was $13, and it's basically just grid paper that's been laminated. So if you print out grid paper and you know somewhere where you could get it laminated cheap, you could do that too. Um,
And yeah, and all of this stuff is assuming you're living off of ramen and 50-cent frozen burritos.
Yeah,
I mean, which both Peter and I have done
yeah,
for years at a time.
yeah. Unemployment sucks.
Yeah, it does.
So, at any rate, those are good little starting points there. That's if you're planning on using a map-based system, then that's a good way to save money there. Or you could play a system that doesn't require a map. Incidentally, one of the games we talk about a lot and we both adore, the Feng Shui, the action movie
Feng
RPG,
Shui, yeah.
you really only need the basic rulebook. So if you could find a used copy for cheap, you're golden because that's really all you need. You need that,
Yeah, the
a few,
even Brad Spankin knew it wasn't an expensive rule book.
right. Find you need that, a few D6s that are different colors from each other, some paper, pencils, and a good and just have and people to have fun with, and you're good to go.
You can take all your savings and spend them on booze for an even more entertaining game.
Yep. And other things that will help you as a game master that are good ways to save money and be cheap. Um, as I've said before, as a game master, one thing that does help a lot is to read a lot, watch a lot of movies or what have you for inspiration.
Yep.
There are lots of good ways to save money doing that. The public library is your best friend. Or if you're a college student, even better.
Yeah, because you've got your school's library to draw from.
Exactly. And often you can request books. Um, and most city libraries will be able to transfer books between the various cities' libraries because they're often part of the same network. College libraries are like that also. And most libraries have a selection of movies you can watch for free because it's a library. Uh, and it's just a the public library is a great resource for that sort of thing. Actually, some public libraries even have RPG books in there that you can take out, read through, and see if you read through and figure out if there's something you might like.
Remember growing up, my middle school library had a bunch of first ed D&D books. They no longer do.
Oh dear.
I didn't actually steal them. I actually went to take them out for like the 17th time in a row to find that they had been stolen.
Oh, that sucks. But at any rate, the library is a great resource for that. Another great resource for finding stuff to read that might help. Uh, the book company Baen has this amazing thing. It's called the Baen Free Library. And they have a lot of books on there from various authors who they publish. I believe the concept was started by, God, what's his name? Eric Flint. When he basically put up his first book in the 1632 series up there for free. It serves as a mental exercise to see, you know, there's an introduction written by Eric Flint. Basically, Baen Books is now making available for free a number of its titles in electronic format. We're calling it the Baen Free Library. Anyone who wishes can read these book titles online. No conditions, no strings attached. Later, we may ask for extremely simple name and email only registration. Or if you prefer, you can download the books in one of several formats, again, with no conditions or strings attached. And basically, his whole point is that, interestingly enough, what he found was when he put 1632 up for free, sales for the book started going up.
There's actually been several studies on this regarding if people get a free sample of something, they're much more inclined to actually buy it.
Indeed. Actually, WotC, when fourth edition came out, just before it did, a PDF copy of the rulebooks started making its way around the internet, pirated, and largely a lot of people really suspected that a large part of fourth edition's really early success and big sales was due to the fact that people read through the rules and said, "This is neat. I want to buy it." I wish WotC had learned from this and still kept, PDFs of the books available, but that's a different topic.
Again, Privateer, once they had finalized the rules for War Machine Mark II, put them up for free on the internet. Didn't get any of the neat art or flavor stuff, but
the rules are there.
The rules were there. And this is a war game and therefore not cheap. But
right. Yes, because then you need the miniatures. But
right.
again, the Bane Free Library is a fantastic resource that I don't make enough use out of myself. Um, and the URL for that is www.baen.com/library. Or you could do a search on Google for Bane Free Library. And I'll post a link there in the chat for the people watching us live. Um,
And yeah, there's actually been several studies that piracy can increase sales. Doesn't always, but it can, and that people will try it before they buy it type of deal.
yep.
That's how a lot of the more benign internet pirates out there work.
Yep.
Um, Someone who is on the show and is bald and has a beard would know this from personal experience.
The one who has hair and a beard might have also done something like this at some point in the past also.
Ah, I see.
But pirating is wrong.
It is. It totally is. Um, and not just because you're saving big corporate monkey mucks. Because the artists deserve to get paid.
Yeah, that's actually the main reason. I agree.
And
if
yes, sometimes the publishers and whatnot will bone the artists, but if they start seeing a decline in revenue, that means they're less inclined to take risks on good stuff, which means they'll just get more and more Madden 42.
yeah, basically, yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I honestly,
Madden doesn't suffer. Games like Ico suffers.
exactly. Uh, and that brings me to my next, actually sort of indirectly brings me to my next suggestion. Independent games. There
Yes.
are a lot of good independent press RPGs out there, and they're often much cheaper than the mainstream books. The first one that leaps to mind for me, we've mentioned this in the past, I've mentioned this in the past, is Savage Worlds, which is it's technically a universal system. It's the core system they use for the new Deadlands game. I bought a copy of the rules. It was $10 for these. It's not the full size, big book version, but it's all the rules are in there. All the same basic text is in there, but it's a smaller paperback book. And it was $10. And you could get a lot of mileage out of a solid universal system that costs you $10.
There are a bunch of them out there. I, of course, can't think of any off the top of my head because I've played very few of them.
Right.
But there are a bunch of them out there. And our friendly local gaming store, Pandemonium, plug. Thanks for not kicking me out on Saturday, guys. um, has like an entire shelf dedicated to independent press RPGs.
And there's a mix of price ranges for them. Some of them actually can be fairly expensive just because they've gone the extra mile to make it a big, pretty book.
Right.
And
And again, some of them are more expensive because they invested in the production values.
right, exactly. Additionally, another sort of reasonably priced one that I can think of off the top of my head is I don't know anything about the game itself. I've heard good things about it. It's a system called the Burning Wheel, which you could basically it's a two-book thing that you need, but they usually bundle it for about $25. The two books. Again, don't know much about the system myself, but I've heard a lot of people who really like it, and it's fairly cheap. So you can look into that. Let's see. Any other sort of thoughts that come to mind, Eric?
Oh, geez. Yeah, I told you the other day I thought it was good for like 15 minutes on this, man.
I figured, but I have to ask.
That, yeah, honestly, eBay, I mean, if you're at college, and a lot of you are, there's going to be a bulletin board, physical or not, where people are going to be looking to get rid of this shit cheap for whatever reason. So you can usually pick it up on the cheap from people on campus.
Yep.
I know I've done that in the past.
It's a good resource right there. But yeah, honestly, once you have the core book, The rest of it can be made very cheap,
Yes.
as we sort of touched on, and
And there are less if you're looking to get into wargaming, there are less expensive war games out there,
yep.
but it's still an expensive hobby. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I love it some good, but it's still an expensive hobby.
Yeah.
Um,
Honestly, probably one of the cheapest ones to get into I can think of off the top of my head is probably BattleTech.
BattleTech's pretty inexpensive. Tough to find the minis for. You almost always have to go online for them.
But yeah, the current box set for it is, I forget how much it's, like 50, $60.
Right.
But it comes with all the rules you need. Uh, round about, like, I think it's like 14 miniatures.
Yeah. They're very poor quality miniatures. I mean,
Well, outside of they're lower quality, most of the plastics are lower quality plastic miniatures. But then they also have, I think it comes with two actual higher quality sort of baseline. Oh, it's 26 according to Clark One in the chat.
oh,
So,
okay.
so you're getting like 26 miniatures, which is a good number. And they're not the
Yes.
highest quality, but they will actually, look okay on the table once you paint them. Yeah, it's 24
Says you.
base.
I honestly can't stand the look of them, but I'm a bit of a snob.
Yeah, it's honestly it's two companies of battle mechs
Yeah.
plus two more, which are the normal quality battle mechs. Plus, it gives you a nice heavy stock map with little bits of terrain, little bits of card terrain, and it's an excellent deal. And that's
Um,
about as cheap as you're going to get into a
it's
war
true.
game.
Games Workshop produces some less expensive skirmish level games.
Yep,
My personal favorite, Mordheim, is one. Necromunda. I mean, the initial investment's still kind of up there, but it's going to be for any war game.
yep.
Um, Privateer, again, love my Privateer press.
Oh, they've got a great deal
They have
actually.
got a great starter box for both their flagship games, War Machine and Hordes, which are actually compatible. You can play War Machine armies against Horde armies, which is a great idea.
There's a new starter box that they released. I don't know if you know about this one, Eric.
Yes, it's got
It's Khador versus Menoth.
right, and it's
Uh,
got like
it's the basic sort of army, basic starter box for each of the armies. So it's three
yep,
jacks or two jacks in the case of Khador, and a warcaster, and then some
and
infantry troops,
yep,
and the rules, and like a tape measure and a little bit of terrain, and it's like
yeah,
80
like
bucks.
it's a phenomenal buy, and it's the infantry are actually good. I think it's actually Kildor Manowar and some variation of Exemplar Knights for Menoth.
Yeah, and it's that's a completely playable game out of the box for two people.
Yeah, straight up. Another inexpensive one is Malifaux. I haven't played it or looked too closely at it.
Yep, I didn't either,
Um,
but I've seen people playing it. I
it's it's definitely a small skirmish level game. It's fairly cheap to get into, and you've hit. Apparently, the theme of the game is undead zombie hookers versus goblins.
Huh.
It's very much a sort of steampunk bayou kind of feel to it, which I kind of dig, but I'm too heavily invested in other games to start on a new
Exactly. Yeah, same here.
one.
But there are a bunch of so if you're looking to get into wargaming on the cheap, it's
Yeah.
not going to be cheap, but there's relative cheapness to be found. And again, you can often, if you go through eBay and look carefully, you can find miniatures that are people are selling off for less money than they normally would sell for. You can also find miniatures
This
that are
is
selling for
especially true. This is especially true for loose plastic Games Workshop minis.
absolutely, which are again often aren't as high quality as the newer stuff, but they'll get the job done.
Oh no, you'll see the new stuff up there for dirt cheap too.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, I don't know how they're doing it, but they're doing
Tacky.
it.
I'm guessing they're buying some certain sets and then taking what they need out of it, and then basically going, I got what I need out of this. The rest of the stuff is sort of a sunk cost as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I was more assuming something a bit more nefarious, but
Oh, well, there's that too, but I wasn't going to go there. Um, but at any rate, again, yeah, eBay is a great source. Although eBay's relative cheapness isn't at the level it used to be at,
this is true.
but it's still a good resource for finding stuff. And I know there are
I
message
personally think
boards.
is the more expensive it will be, strangely enough, on eBay.
Yeah. There, and I know of message boards out there. There's a site I used to frequent that I frequented for a little while called miniatureswap.com or something like that, where which was basically devoted to people sort of saying, well, I've got these miniatures I'm no longer using. I'm looking for these miniatures that I want. Uh, and people would work out trades between various people to trade them off to each other. And so you could offload miniatures you used to have that you no longer use for miniatures that you could use.
I do believe Warseer has a similar form. Warseer is a website dedicated largely to Games Workshop stuff. It's the closest thing you're going to find to a official forum for them.
Mm-hmm. Cool, cool. I know for a fact I offloaded a bunch of 40k figs that I wasn't using. This is ages ago. That's how I got most of my Crix army that I have for War Machine.
Oh, okay.
It's like, wow, I'm not planning on playing this army anymore. This army, I bought a bunch of miniatures for some army. I forget which one it was. I think it was some stuff for the orcs, the space orcs that I.
Mm.
And I was like, I happened to notice the site. I'm like, hey, neat. What's it? Oh, someone's got some Crick stuff that is looking for 40k stuff. Would you be interested in space orcs? And his reaction was, sure. And I got, the basic Crix box set, a few extra bone jacks, a few extra thralls here and there, and that was sort of the basis of what I have for my Crix. I bought a couple of, I bought Asphyxius separately, some other stuff, and so I ended up spending very small amounts of extra money on the game, on my Crix army than I'd already spent on buying miniatures before. But yeah, as we said, the internet is a big help and a big resource for you. I think that covers most of the sort of tips I can think of off the top of my head, Eric. What about you?
Pretty much, yeah. eBay, look for sales, look for dying game stores. As sad as that is,
Yep.
you can at least profit off the corpse. My God, that sounds ghoulish.
Yeah, it does. And there are a bunch of good resources on the web out there that are free. As I touched on, Rysis, the Anything RPG. Ars Magica 4th Edition can be gotten off of Steve Jackson Games web store, e23.sjgames.com. There's a game called Witchcraft from Eden Studios that's free. Neverwhere is available from Postmortem Studios for free. Pathfinder's system resource document, which has almost all the rules of Pathfinder. It might have I think it has all the rules. It's just missing some of the other stuff in there. D20pfsrd.com. And then the Bane Free Library, www.baen.com/library, for a bunch of free resources that will be very useful to you as a game master and as just a general gamer. And honestly, for the Bane Free Library, it's just a great way to to find new books to read. I think that covers most of what we're going to talk about on the subject for today. So why don't we move into questions? We have 3 of them in the email this week.
Not even counting the one we did the show on.
Yes. This question comes from Eric Carlson.
It does?
Well, a different Eric Carlson. Hello, Peter, and hello,
it's
Guy.
It's my evil clone.
Hello, Peter, and hello, Guy, who has the exact same name as me. If your middle name is Michael, M-I-K-E-L, then I will freak out.
It is not, in fact. It is, in fact, Thor.
There we go. He says, I am GMing a group of first-time players, and being a first-time RPG player myself, I find it very hard to encourage role-playing and creative solutions to problems. How do I make my players, for instance, role-play out an encounter with the guard instead of just saying, I roll diplomacy, or encourage players to use a chandelier to swing and kick an orc in the face instead of just hitting it with a sword? Greetings from Sweden, Eric Carlson.
All right, my evil clone friend. If you have a goatee, then you're definitely an evil clone.
You have a goatee, Eric.
I'm also an evil clone, obviously. A lot of I've found role playing to be kind of infectious. So the more you play it up, the more likely your players are also. If you can find an actor who loves improv that wouldn't mind joining your game, he's going to be a massive help for getting people to do it also.
As long as he's generally a sort of a fun guy to have around. That's the
Yeah,
caveat.
don't avoid arrogant pricks.
But yeah, basically, break if you have a friend who's into improv, see if he's interested in joining the group.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Um,
I agree with Eric completely. Roleplay is infectious, and
like laughter and herpes.
sort of being more cinematic in combat is also infectious. So I mean, as a game master, I mean, you're new to game mastering. That's fine. It means you're somewhat new to role playing. But don't be afraid to basically try role playing with them. And if they don't role play that's okay at first. Give them time to start getting into this feel of things. Basically sort of say, and if they role play out a scene somewhat well, like trying to interact with the guard to try to get them to do what you want, give them a small bonus to the die roll to their diplomacy check if they present a good convincing argument. Never give out penalties if they don't.
Yeah, I mean, as far as social skill rules go, the way I've largely seen it done from personal experience and insisted that it be done the rare occasion I deign to GM. Um, the, you role play out the encounter and then you make the die roll to see how the guy's going to react.
Yep. So yeah, basically just to say if they're just sort of say I roll diplomacy, ask them, well, what is it you want to say? They don't even have to role play it out at first, but at least get them to sort of describe how they are approaching it, and that will start building um, confidence in their actual sort of feelings of the character, and eventually it'll help them start role playing. And as to sort of getting them to do cool things in combat, have the bad guys do cool things in combat. And when they ask you, well, how would I do that? You basically tell them, well, just, do this. And hand out small bonuses here and there to, when they do something clever. It's like, if they swing on a chandelier to get so they can attack the guy from above, give them like a +1 to hit because the guy's not expecting it, or they've got an improved angle. Small things like that. Nothing excessive. Just small little bonuses here and there for doing cool stuff.
Zany cinematic stuff with goblins is always fun.
Indeed. So yeah, that's sort of I think that's sort of the basics there. It's try to be, as I said, encourage, give small rewards for people doing things, and usually to sort of making in-game stuff a little bit easier. Like don't not like handing out extra experience or things like that, but if they do something particularly clever or role play something particularly well, give them a small bonus to the die roll.
I've actually never encountered a GM that was not willing to give out extra XP for good role playing.
Yeah, I think I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I think it's not it can foster sometimes a little bit of sort of like, hey, why did he get extra XP?
Right.
Until you are actually comfortable and you know how the group's going to react to it.
Um, let me rephrase what I just said. I have never encountered a GM that was not willing to hand out extra XP for good role playing, where good role playing was not the norm.
That is definitely more apropos, I think.
Yeah.
All right, so I hope that answers your question, Eric Carlson from Sweden.
We should go beat up English people and take their silver at some point. You and me, man, let's go raiding.
I'm only half a Viking. I'm half English, the other half, so
We can beat you up and take half your silver.
bring it. Remember, I am half Viking.
Right, so they'll be able to half defeat us, because the only thing that can beat a Viking is another Viking.
That's not entirely true, but
I've seen the movie Pathfinder. That's exactly how it plays out.
okay. Well, historically, they eventually started running into the Mongols, who were kind of land Vikings, really. But that's another topic.
You see, they were land Vikings. Also walls. Walls suck.
All right. So next up, we got a question from Arjan de Koning. I'm guessing he's Dutch. Also, it's King Waza. Okay, from the chat. So King Waza here has a question. Here's a question. What do you think of tie-in games? People like watching something, and I know I'm not the only person, self-inserting them into other things. What do you guys think works or doesn't work, and what do you guys think about creating a fan-made module using another system for existing properties? An example might be using Fire Emblem as a base world in like a D20 game, etc. Oh, greetings from the Netherlands, the true king of Waza. I was right. He is Dutch.
You are cunning. Yes, go for it. Awesome.
Yeah, basically. For fan-based stuff, abso-freaking-lutely. You think, oh wow, I like the Fire Emblem world and I want to run RPG in here. Hey, the D20 system looks like it'll work. I'll do that.
I think we've all done this at least a million times.
I'm, what I remember, honestly, I know people who basically, basically took the world of Final Fantasy and adapted it to, I think it was GURPS, but I don't remember. Not the system I would personally use for it, but honestly, if it's a place to start building your own game world, I think it's fantastic. Um, and there are a
Assuming
bunch.
one doesn't already exist,
Yeah, exactly.
because
Well, yeah.
support the creators, guys.
Well,
But yeah,
again, well, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with creating your own version of it.
absolutely not. This is also true.
But additionally, I think another part of this would be sort of, like, I'm guessing sort of other part of this is the non-fan made stuff, sort of, licensed properties, and there are a boatload of them.
Mm.
Some of them work very well.
There used to be a time where if something was even remotely popular in geek culture, it got its own RPG.
There was a long period of time where during the D20 when D20 had come out, if it was popular in pop culture, there was a D20 RPG book for it.
Yeah.
Um,
Dancing for the Stars, D20.
there is, and there, and it's a mixed bag. Some of them work well, some of them don't. There's a lot of science fiction and fantasy books that have had source books made for them for GURPS. Some of them work absolutely brilliantly. I'm looking at you, GURPS Riverworld, believe it or not.
Huh.
It blows
Okay.
my mind that I read. I used to have a copy of it. Brilliant book. The books are also really good. Um, there's GURPS Lensman is kind of clever. There's just GURPS Uplift is fantastic.
I can
Uh,
only imagine, actually.
Uplift
I want to
is
play a Neo Chimp.
doable.
I want
It's
to play
in
a
there.
Neo Chimp named Fibbin Blogger, and that'll be awesome. Or is it Bulger? I don't remember.
At
I'm
any
going to
rate,
play that guy.
but and there are other games like there's the Firefly. Eric's mentioned the Firefly RPG
The
and
Farscape
the Farscape. That's what I meant,
RPG.
Farscape. But there's a Firefly one
Honestly,
also.
The Farscape one isn't so great. As much as I love the show and as much fun as I had in that game, there are a great many changes I'd make to it.
Mhm.
But it's also not published anymore. So
Yep. Guardians of Order made a boatload of supplements for uh, Big Eye Small Mouth, based on a whole bunch of different RPG, bunch of anime series. A couple of them had D20 supplements made for them, including the very well done Slayer's D20, which I own and enjoyed quite immensely the time I ran it. That one worked surprisingly well, actually. Um, and there are boatloads out there. But what do I think of them? Of the official ones, uh, they don't surprise me that they exist, and they're a mixed bag.
they really are. They're a huge mixed bag. Um,
Oh, well, there's also the Star Wars role-playing games, duh,
yeah.
and Star Trek, duh.
Holy Icon. Apparently there was a Shadowrun expansion for Reboot. Why
No,
don't
no,
I
no.
own this?
All right, one more question from the email, and then I think I got one via Twitter also.
Holy crap,
Yeah,
we're popular.
yeah. So this is, I don't have a name for this. The email address is inelson88 at comcast.net. Sorry, I don't have your names, my friend.
You
But,
just published this guy's email address.
yeah, well, dear silly Grognards, I'm a new DM trying to prepare for a campaign for some of my friends, and I have a few questions for you. Do you have any tips for a new DM? Do you have any tips on how to play the villains? Well, Inelson. Uh, First off, you could go and listen to our earlier episode, GMing 101. We did an entire show on this topic. Uh,
Feel free to steal villain personalities egregiously from books and movies.
exactly. Go out, have fun, experiment. But yeah,
I can't count the amount of times I've run into a Darth Vader analog in a game, and it's always cool.
but yeah, seriously, we did an entire episode on this. But the long story short, uh, don't be afraid to try things. Start small, build outwards, um, and have fun. I mean, really. I mean,
Yeah,
as long as and talk to your players. Get a feel for how they're feeling about things are going. Um, listen to their concerns, and you know, remember it's a cooperative thing. Everyone's there to have fun, including you. That's an important note.
That is an important note. If the GM's
It's
not having fun, then something's wrong.
exactly. So I mean, but just try it out, have fun and such. It's not the easiest thing, but it's work. But it's very rewarding work if it ends up being up your alley. So and then I think we'll touch on the last question here. I think we got time to answer this. We do actually. This is from La Zodiac, otherwise known as the Zodi Lady, off Twitter. Um, she says, if you haven't got a topic for Shirley Grognards yet, which we did, uh, what to do if player versus player conflicts arise? I asked because I've recently had a rather dramatic split of my my game in character. So this is specifically player, not a personality conflict between the two players, but sort of an in-game conflict between between the characters in the game because they're role playing out the sort of the conflict between the characters' personalities.
Is anyone
Uh,
dead yet?
and it's called. It sounds like it's sort of potentially causing problems in the campaign as a whole. Potential problems for the campaign.
Mm.
How to handle this? Okay, here's the first thing: player versus player conflicts in well role play games will actually sometimes will come up, and they can be great. They can add a lot to the game. They can also cause things to break down, and can end games prematurely if you're not if. Now, mind you, prematurely is not necessarily the right word because sometimes it's because of the natural evolution of those two characters in the same game. Across most of the game, the tension has made things really cool and interesting, but everyone knows it's eventually going to come to a head between these two guys, and it's going to have something tragic's going to happen, and that can make for a great story and a great campaign, but it can also lead to hurt feelings sometimes if you're not careful and players don't handle it right.
The greatest moment of character conflict I've ever had in a game was not between me. It was between two other players in the old Farscape game. And I'd been building for ages. One of the characters' stated purpose was playing a sociopath with psychotic tendencies, but a high-functioning one, so it took us a while to figure it out. But eventually it all came to a head, and the ship's doctor tricked him into sitting down in the med bay, and where he promptly split his head in half with a medical laser. And the resulting shitstorm from first everyone going, "That's awesome," and then role playing their characters' reactions.
Yeah, the players are like, awesome. That was really well. That was really awesome. And
Yeah,
then, okay, how's my character going to react to this? Oh fuck.
it resulted in a gunfight on the ship between two factions. Um,
And given the
no one else died, but there was a lot of bloodshed.
and and given the source material, this is perfectly in camp. It works perfectly.
Yes, absolutely. But
Um,
it was possibly one of the most intense nights of role playing I've played in memory, and it was loads of fun. It ground the game to a halt, but it was great.
so yeah, often. So that's the thing is often that sort of thing will often end up, as I said, sort of if not. I mean, it often will lead to the end of the game, but often it almost sort of becomes sort of the where the game really should end. Not by the sort of way you actually originally planned it as the game master or the way the player characters planned it, but due to the way the characters interacted and evolved, there's really nowhere else it could have gone. At least, and that doesn't necessarily mean the game's over, but it can. And sometimes that actually ends up working out, and sometimes it's unfortunate, uh, but
One of the amusing things that was fallout from this was because it took a while for us to be able to shoe in a new character for the dead guy. He ended because my character was had along the course of the game become addicted to several drugs. The other players started playing hallucinations, a la Helpful Harvey, for my
oh dear.
character. It was Matt Gertman playing my hallucinations. It was great.
Oh, I wish that's a game I would a couple few sessions I would love to have been a fly on the wall for. Oh man, but yeah, the important bit here is if you're running a game, for the game master's point of view here, is if it looks like this is getting heated, pause the game and take a chance to, or at least after a session, talk to the players about it and make sure that it really is just in character first. You don't, and make sure it's clear to them that you're okay with the conflict, assuming you are okay. If you're okay with the conflict, as long as it doesn't, A, doesn't cause hurt feelings, and B, as long as it doesn't really impinge on the other player's enjoyment of what's going on. So you got to be sure that, everyone's enjoying what's going on still. If they're not, then you're going to have to find a way to resolve it in some way. Up Ivy, our friend Dan in the chat says, keep it classy. He's completely right.
Absolutely.
Um,
it could become one of the most memorable, defining moments of the game when things come to a head. And I'll say that after that conflict in the Farscape game, the game is never the same because the character dynamic completely changed.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
yeah, worst case scenario, if it looks like it's actually hurting the enjoyment for the other players, find a way for one of those two PC players to make an exit from the campaign. Preferably not in a sort of a way.
Well, if it's purely a character thing, they can just switch characters. They themselves don't have to leave.
That's my point. I'm not talking about they themselves. I'm talking about the character.
Oh, okay.
Writing that character out and bringing in a new character, but make sure it's a graceful sort of moving of the character out, not just like and then a rock falls on him and kills him. But look for a way for her to work that character out and work a new character in. So
that's only if it's actually an issue.
Yeah, that's my
seriously,
point. Yes.
It can be. This kind of stuff makes for great role playing.
Absolutely. It's just I'm talking about the worst case scenario here.
Yeah, worst case scenario.
But as I said, the GM's job here really is to talk to the players about it and make sure, get a feeling from everybody in the group, and and get a feel for how they feel about what's going on at the table, and make sure that everybody's comfortable with what's going on and comfortable with where it looks like it's going, and that they're enjoying it. If it's making the game less fun for other players, you got to do something about it and talk to the players about it and try to work with each other about how to resolve it without it without it actually breaking the game. Is basically what I'm sort of trying to say, I think. But so again, it's a classic case of one of my favorite sort of mantras about GMing: communicate with the players, talk with them. And if you're a player in the game and this is happening and it's making you uncomfortable and you're not enjoying things, after a game session, talk to the other players about it. Talk to the game master about it. Don't be confrontational about it, but just sort of say, hey guys, look, I understand that this is sort of an in-character thing and it's, it makes sense for the characters, but it's sort of, it's getting uncomfortable and I'm sort of not enjoying the game as much right now. Can you find a way to either tone it down or work toward resolving it or something? Please. But not necessarily phrase like that, but find a way to sort of do it, again, not in a confrontational way, but make sure you're expressing what you're feeling about it, because otherwise you're not going to let them know. I mean, and
right, and that's the problem, because if the players are both cool, if both the players involved are both cool with it, they're going to keep going and ratcheting it up because they think it's cool.
And if they don't know that other people don't think it's cool, then they can't do anything. They won't know to do anything about it.
Exactly.
And there are ways to take that conflict and keep it going without it, escalating to bad points. That's why I started talking about more sort of, toning it down or, changing the dynamic of the actual, how they're dealing with it to make it more fun. I think that pretty much covers that, though. What do you think?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
All right. I think that's pretty much all the time we have for tonight. Any last thoughts on gaming on a budget?
I think we covered things pretty well.
I do too. So that's it for this week, guys. I hope everybody had fun. We did. Hope you enjoyed the show and hope it was helpful. As usual, if you have any questions you'd like answered on the show, or if you have feedback on the show, suggestions, critiques, what have you, or possible future topic titles, you can always email them to us at surlygrognards, Grognards, at yahoo.com. That's all one word, Surly Grognards at yahoo.com. You can also find me on Twitter at MechaGM or on Facebook or Google Plus, Peter Bowman. Eric does the art for a webcomic called Boston Arcanum, which you can find at bostonarcanum.com. You guys back in publishing stuff?
I'm looking that up now.
But it's good stuff. They've been working getting updates again going because various scheduling stuff, they haven't been able to do it recently. But they should be getting stuff back up and going soon, if not already. Am I right there, Eric?
I'm. It's taking a while to load. Oh, we got a new page up.
They've got a new page up, folks. There we go. So I think that's it for this week. Uh, we'll be back next week with a new episode. We don't have a topic yet, but I'm sure we'll come up with one during the week, and I'll be sure to tweet about it when we do.
Yep.
So thanks for listening. I hope you all enjoyed it and found it useful. So this is Peter Bowman signing out, and for my good friend Eric Carlson, I wish you all a good night and
Good night, humans.
Yeah, have fun gaming, guys. So say good night, Eric.
Good night, Eric.